All right, 49ers win total, 8.5, over -110. Odds to make the playoffs, yes, plus 220. Odds to win the division, 11-5. Odds to win the NFC, 7-1. Can you believe it? Odds to win the Super Bowl, 12-1. Last year, 6-10 straight up, 9-7 against the spread. Win total, 8-8. Key additions, big additions. McKinnon, Sherman, drafted Pettis, and also had to clean up the offensive line because they gave Jimmy G 5 for 137. Shanahan and Lynch said, we've seen enough. This kid's the real deal. Pay him now. And he crushed it. They went 1-10 straight up without him. When he became the starter, they went 5-0 straight up. Cash cow, made people a ton of money. Also beat 3 playoff teams down the stretch, although the Rams sat everybody in week 17. So they they make a lot of big time moves in terms of some big names. Sherman, we don't know, coming off the injury, but the win total 8.5. And I know in Northern Nevada, it's an avalanche of 49ers money. So they are the sexy pick they are. I mean, look, all you have to tell, 12-1 to win the Super Bowl. That's all you need to know, Teddy.
And it tells you how high the markets are on San Fran right now. Although this is one of the rare win totals that we saw initial upwards pressure. The 8.5s were getting bet up to 9. And then without injury, without change, without suspension, without anything like that, the market shifted. And we've actually seen this number come back down to 8.5 in most locations, 8.5. It's actually priced 8.5 with a little bit of juice to the over. But the bottom line is this is a win total that here in Vegas has gotten two-way action. And that doesn't often happen, at least before August rolls around and the injuries start to come through. I would call, and I've been betting season wins for the better part of the last 20 years. My whole time in Vegas is one of my favorite bets. That's one of the reasons we go through every team throughout the course of the summer months. I'm doing my prep. I'm trying to share some of it with you. And I honestly think that last year's 49ers under bet was the worst bad beat I've seen in a season win total ever. San Fran under 5.5. They're 1-10. They're hopeless. They're absolutely hopeless. And all of a sudden, some kid named Garoppolo comes in, and lo and behold, the 49ers are not just good. They're a juggernaut. They win 5 in a row. They beat 3 playoff teams. You talked about it. It was a truly
They weren't going to play him.
I know.
They also weren't going to play him because the offensive line was so bad, and they didn't want to get him hurt. He got in there in that Seattle game and threw a touchdown on the final play because of an injury. And then, you're right. The rest is history. He didn't lose.
So it was a brutal beat. Now it's a matter of, okay, Garoppolo's perfect as a starter. Expectations are sky high. They spent a ton of money. Again, San Fran, big buyers in free agency. We talk about Richard Sherman, Weston Rickberg, Jerick McKinnon from Minnesota, 4 years, $30 million. Jonathan Cooper to shore up the offensive line. No shortage of big money additions, and all with guys who are expected to have an impact right away. Obviously, we didn't put in that kind of money, but San Fran, for a 6-10 team, A, they spent a lot of money, and B, they made a lot of win-now moves. And, of course, one of those, as you mentioned, was signing Garoppolo to that 5-year deal.
Jimmy Jesus is the man, and he's 7-0 all time as a starter in the NFL. And I think he'll make anybody look good. But you can't give them all the credit, though, because they had some bad luck to start the season. This is all right in a row. Lost by 3 at Seattle. Lost by 2 at home against the Rams. Lost in overtime by a field goal at Arizona. Lost by 3 against the Colts. Lost by 2 to the... they lost 5 games in a row by 3 points or less.
Yeah, no question. But they were the kind of team that was going to lose 5 games in a row by 3 points or less. The defense wasn't great. The offense wasn't great. And that's putting it mildly. So I wasn't shocked that I was actually more shocked that they were competitive at that stage than they were losing ball games. But it's not like this team filled all of their holes. I don't love their receiving core. I really don't. Marquise Goodman, he's not a true number 1. Pierre Garçon, Trent Taylor, the second-round rookie Dante Pettis is not a receiving core that I love. You have a defense that certainly, they're relying a lot on Richard Sherman. And Richard Sherman, he's 30 years old. He's he didn't seem to be the same guy last year in Seattle. Now, it may be a new venue is all he needs to get going again, but it's a defense, you know. The pass rush to me is a question mark. The secondary is a question mark. The receiving core is a question mark. That's a lot of question marks for a team that's being priced like a Super Bowl contender. A team that, by the way, won 6 games last year, not 12.
Should be the second best team in this division, though. Seattle's got a ton of issues, and then so does Arizona. NFC West plays NFC North, and AFC West, 2 extra games, Giants at home, and at Tampa. You have to like that. But I'll tell you, there's a couple ways to look at this. If they get off to a good start, you can flash the schedule here. If they get off to a good start, watch out. At Minnesota, Detroit at home, at Kansas City, and at the Chargers. That could be a 1-3. That could be a 3-1. But if they get off to a hot start, because then there's a lot of winnable games after that, and it's great to see the 49er Nation back. Remember how bad that was? There was an empty stadium for every home game. They couldn't care less, and then they started to win. Garoppolo came back, and it's also fascinating how things flipped in the Bay Area. The Raiders were the hot team and the sexy team. They were supposed to do something. I know Carr got hurt and they lost in the playoffs, but they were looking at a 1 or a 2 seed a couple years ago. And then it was a bad year for them, and now they got Gruden coming back, but now it's all 49ers hype in the Bay Area. And then they close, you know, Tampa, Seattle, Chicago, Seattle again, Denver. A lot of winnable games, and who knows, maybe the Rams sit people again in Week 17. Got to get off to a good start, though. That's a great matchup Week 1 against the Vikings.
Yeah, it sure is. And that really is key when you talk about that initial start of the season. At Minnesota, at KC, at the Chargers, at Green Bay. That's their first 4 road games. They got the Rams in that mix. And a couple of teams with, you know, solid veteran quarterbacks in the Lions and Arizona. The one thing we know from San Fran from last year is that even if they get off to a rough start, they have a decent chance of coming on strong late. But this is not a team I'm particularly bullish on. I think the markets are pretty high on San Fran. And look, I like what they did in the draft. You know, you bring in McClinchy, he's an impact player from Notre Dame. Pettis is a speedster from Washington. You know, shoring up the linebacking core and the defense. You know, the key positions that we talked about of need. Fred Warner, Tavarius Moore, Contavious Street. Solid draft, solid team, but not a team that I'm saying, hey, Super Bowl or bust. You know, San Fran's still a year or 2 away, maybe 2, despite their success down the stretch of last year's losing campaign. Like the show? Help us keep the lights on. Please make sure to comment, share, and subscribe to all the Sportsbook Review videos. Thanks so much. Best of luck. Enjoy the games.